Welcome to Apologetics and Prophecy, the official podcast of Calvary Solid Ground, a remnant church in Orangevale, California. I am Pastor Jed, and I will be your host as we bring you Bible studies and updates put through an apologetical and biblical lens to see just how close we are to the return of our Lord. Thank you for joining us today. Maranatha, everyone. This is Pastor Jed again on this weekly prophecy update. Today we're going to look at prophecy in the news. And we have a lot to news to cover, so we're going to jump right in. But we just need to be reminded that this world is headed someplace. That the things that we see to think that everything is falling apart, but in the reality as we read these stories, everything is actually falling into place. God has a plan to allow humanity for one last try to rule himself, which will lead to a one-world government, a one-world leader, and ultimately Satan coming and having his day with humanity because humanity has rejected God and the gospel of his son, Jesus Christ. And so as the world continues to grow darker and darker, everything lines up to fulfill what God has already said in his word beforehand. And that's why we do these prophecy updates, to show us how close we are to the return of our Lord. And today is no different, but we need to be reminded that in the 70 weeks prophecy that Daniel does, and specifically this part in Daniel 9:26, and it says, after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And so this is speaking of the death of Jesus Christ on the cross for the sins of the world, that we knew that was going to happen. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And so we see this prophecy about the people of the prince who is to come. And of course, we know that the people that destroyed the city and the sanctuary was none other than the Romans in 70 A.D. And so that would mean the prince, the Antichrist, the one who's going to make a covenant with many nations for 7 years, is going to come from those people. And that would be the Roman Empire, which was very interesting because it was imperialism that marked Rome. That was what differentiated Rome from other countries and other governments. And the imperialism of Rome might have been, never was conquered. It basically just crumbled apart from its own immorality and inability to manage itself. And it crumbled apart. And really, basically, the governments of the world, the countries of today, are all fragmented in pieces of the two legs of the Roman Empire that split before it crumbled apart. And so the only difference is that we don't have a form of imperialistic government anymore. So we should see two things if we're getting close to the return of the Lord. If those things are starting to line up, if the pieces are starting to put, we should see a power shift over into Europe. And then we should see the rise, or the beginning rise, of imperialism. And so let's look at some stories today and ask ourselves if that is true. And of course, the first story I have is big news from the WHO, and this is from their own website, the World Health Organization's website. And this happened on June 5th. And it says the European Commission and WHO launch landmark digital health initiative to strengthen global health security. So this is part of the thing that we've been talking about for a while now, that the United States has pushed off signing into this until April of next year. And so they're hoping to be lined up and jump in on it at the next meeting in May, when they are going to solidify and strengthen this health agreement with the WHO. But this is very interesting because the EU has already stepped up and provided them with a platform that will be used on a global level. Let's go ahead and read on. The World Health Organization and European Commission have announced today the launch of a landmark digital health partnership. In June of 2023, WHO will take up the European Union system of digital COVID-19 certification to establish a global system, listen to that will help facilitate global mobility and protect citizens across the world from ongoing and future health threats, including pandemics. This is the first building block of the WHO Global Digital Health Certification Network. So they already have the system. And let me just finish reading this. It says that will develop a wide range of digital products to deliver better health for all. Building on the EU's highly successful digital certification network, WHO aims to offer all WHO member states, that would include the United States next year, access to an open source digital health tool, which is based on the principles of equity, innovation, transparency, and data protection and privacy. That's a lie. And said Dr. Tedros Adhanom, Dr. Tedros, this is the WHO Director General. New digital health products in development aim to help people everywhere receive quality health services quickly and more effectively. Based on the EU Global Health Strategy and WHO Global Strategy on Digital Health, the initiative follows the 30th of November 2022 agreement between Commissioner whatever his name is, and Dr. Tedros to enhance strategic cooperation on global health issues. This further bolsters a robust multilateral system with WHO at its core, powered by a strong EU. And so just to kind of fill in the blanks on there, if you're wondering what's going on, if you recall back during the pandemic that people that we know of that lived in the European Union, that they came up with a system that was put on your smartphones, and there was some countries that didn't necessarily, they made it optional, but a lot of countries that we know that we were showing in prophecy updates had gone all the way with this system. And that was a, red light, green light, yellow light system. And if you had a green light, you could go in and out. And the only way you could get a green light is if you had the state-approved treatment, the shots, the jabs. And so a lot of people were stuck in their homes. They couldn't go. They limited them to be able to buy and sell. You could not travel without this pass. There were so many restrictions, and we can see how closely that system relates to the future mark of the beast. And it's an imperialistic system. You're giving one man, this Dr. Tedros, the authority to run a ID and passport system on a global scale that says that only if you have certain state-approved treatments, then you're allowed to go in and out and buy and sell. When the Bible talks about buying and selling without a mark, that's what it's talking about. The freedom to roam about, the freedom to do business as usual. And they've already taken sight of that, and their own words say that this will be the platform that they use on a global scale. We've already seen it in action. It is horrible and horrendous and tyrannical, and it's the imperialistic government forming before our eyes. But then what about, surely, there'll be, people that will disagree with this and be able to, stop it because, the European Union is a union of nations, right? Well, this Prophecy Newswatch article that just came out, elimination of nation-state veto takes EU closer to United States of Europe. In what may be the beginning of the end for European nations, Germany and France are determined to reform national rights, including the EU right of veto this year. The debate has caused a stir in recent months, and in recent weeks, the measure has been put back on the agenda. France and Germany are convinced that a large-scale institutional reform of the European Union, including the abolition of the veto on European Council votes, could be achieved this year. And so this is where, right now the member states can decide, what, we don't like that law, we're going to veto it, and it would put it away. Everybody had this ability to veto what the European Council or the EU laws. It'd be like the states saying, no, we're not going to allow that. It's kind of like that, but Basically, it sums up right here. It says the introduction of qualified majority voting would remove the veto on foreign policy issues, which would mean that only 15 of the 27 member states, representing 65% of the EU's population, would have to agree to make particularly important and foreign and defense policy decisions affecting the EU as a whole. So instead of there being, one or two countries that can dissent, and then that keeps the law from becoming an effect, that now only 15, a little over half of the members can vote, and basically it's mob rules. And we saw that coming. And so, sooner or later, it's going to get down to one. We know eventually it's all going to come down to where one person has centralized the world into a global government and will take control of it. We see imperialism coming back. And then this offguardian.org article that just came out, a global digital compact, UN promoting censorship, social credit, and more. Late last month, the Office of the United Nations Secretary General published a policy document on aims for the future of the internet, a follow-up to the 2021 report, Our Common Agenda, which we've been talking about, the 17 points of Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. The new report's title says it all, really, a global digital compact. That's the goal, international legislation that would seek to control and enforce the use of digital technology. The proposed clauses promote everything you'd expect them to promote. Digital identities linked with financial access. So that's one of the things that they had made in this report. Digital IDs linked with bank or mobile money accounts can improve the delivery of social protection coverage and serve to better reach eligible beneficiaries. Digital technologies may help reduce leakage, errors, and costs in the design of social protection programs. So they're right away pushing for this global digital ID and get global digital central bank digital currency. We've been telling you this is coming. And we've been telling you for years this is coming, and it's here. And people are asleep. I don't understand it. What about the environmental or climate change-based social credit system? They've already got this ESG in place, you guys. Sensors and monitors connected to the Internet of Things, that's AI, watching you all the time. Cloud-based data platforms, blockchain-enabled tracking systems, and digital product passports unlock new capabilities for the measurement and tracking of environmental and social impacts across value chains. That means everything you buy and sell, it's talking about all international business that you do, needs to line up with environmental, social, and governance, ESG. And if it doesn't, then the AI, this Internet of Things, will know and give you a score based on it, whether you're allowed to do business between international neighbors or not. This is not coming. It's already here. And then the public-private partnerships between states, private sector, and civil society leverage to the capacity of digital tools to provide solutions for development across sustainable development goals. Examples include the Digital Public Infrastructure Alliance, the Coalition for Digital Environment Sustainability, and public-private partnerships for disaster response. And so, but then they also go on to say about the countering the online harm. This is the big part. It says disinformation, hate speech, and malicious and criminal activity in cyberspace raise the risk and cost for everyone online. We must strengthen accountability for harmful and malicious acts online. And these are just the obvious ones. There's more sneaky language regarding equity and access. And it's really interesting, But this is the Digital Global Compact. They want to anybody that dissents from their voice, anybody that dissents from the sustainable development goals, if you don't believe in these things, if you don't believe in climate change, if you don't believe in the health that they want to push down, the state-approved treatments, that your speech will be censored because you're not falling in line into the imperialistic narrative that is being pushed down our throats, and the system, it's already in place, you guys. It's already in place. You guys need to be aware of this. And of course, you can go to the UN.org and the Our Common Agenda Policy Brief Digital Compact PDF is right there for you to see for yourself. And then, of course, now that they've centralized their power and their government into imperialism in Europe, what we expect to see headlines like this. We expect to see these kind of things happen. EU looks into blocking out the sun as climate efforts falter. What? The European Union will join an international effort to assess whether large-scale interventions such as deflecting the sun's rays or changing the Earth's weather patterns are viable options for fighting climate change. The bloc will announce a framework Wednesday for assessing the security implications of a rapidly warming planet, such as the potential for scarce water or food to trigger conflict and migration, according to a draft document seen by Bloomberg. Part of the assessment includes studying the potential dangers of re-engineering the atmosphere. These technologies introduce new risks to people and ecosystems, while they could also increase power imbalances between nations, spark conflicts, raises a myriad of ethical, legal, governance, and political issues, according to the document, which is subject to change. Now, they always tell you what they're going to do before they do it, and many times it's because they already are doing it. Embarking on the research pushes the EU closer into the debate over whether so-called climate geoengineering is good science or just science fiction distraction with potentially dangerous implications for the planet and atmosphere. Now, we already know that they are already modifying weather. And, for many years, we've been, kind of on the fence about whether, the contrails mean anything, or is it just a conspiracy? And now we're coming to realize with HARP and all these other things that they've been modifying the weather for a long time. It's become commonplace. And many of the climate disasters that we see happening in the world today, including the wildfires in Canada, by the way, are man-made, not because of our polluting the environment, because they're purposely doing it to push this climate agenda, to push these things so they can take over the world in imperialism. If we got everybody running around scared that the planet is going to burn up any moment and that life on Earth is going to die and it's our fault, then we are willing to give up our freedoms for it. They understand the power of fear, and imperialism, that's the way Rome ruled, with an iron fist. And of course, this firstpost.com also shows us how closer we are to, the United States has to decrease and the European Union needs to increase. And so with all the stuff going on between the United States and Russia, that Russia is a global partner and player in the International Monetary Fund, which is the framework for the global digital currency. This firstpost.com article says U.S. responsible for de-dollarization, says IMF. IMF executive director for Russia, Aliska Monson, says calls for the de-dollarization. Said the call for de-dollarization has been gaining momentum, with many countries switching to trade in yuan, not only with China, but also with third countries. Washington's policies and actions have compelled most countries across the world to seek alternatives to the dollar, said IMF's executive director for Russia. In an interview with RIA, this guy said that the call for a de-dollarization has been gaining momentum, with many countries switching to trade in yuan, not only with China, but also with third countries. Now, they say that this process has begun. Now, underneath many of our noses, many people aren't even paying attention to it, but China has already begun what's known as the BRICS nations, which I believe is Brazil, Russia, Iran, and China are all doing trade with one another in Chinese dollars. We just saw today an article come out that Emmanuel Macron is going to go meet with the BRICS and see if the EU can't join them. So they're circumventing all the sanctions in the United States, and the United States has no power anymore. It's continuing to see the power shift from America over to the European Union. We see it happening all the time. And then there's this HarbingersDaily.com article that's something we've been talking about, but it says, is the UN's proposed 7-year plan prophetically significant? The UN recently announced that they need 7 years of accelerated transformative action to achieve the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. That's where you'll see this written everywhere. 2030 is their date. And of course, we understand that that is 2030. So they're going to have a summit in September of 2023. And they're really pushing that as the genuine turning point. They need all the countries to come together and make a pact in 2023 to set forward this agenda to reach it by 2030. Now, a lot of people will point to the 7 years as being prophetically significant because we just read in Daniel chapter 9, verse 7, it says, he, that prince of the people, the prince who is to come, shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. So we know that it is prophetically significant in that they're actually talking about 7-year treaties and 7-year plans. And we are 7 years until 2030, but there isn't an antichrist. There is no one world leader on the scene. We know that it can happen rapidly, and whether it happens before or after the rapture of the church, we're not looking for the 7-year treaty. We're looking for the return of Jesus Christ to catch us away in the air. So the prophetic significance of all these things is just what we've been talking about. The rise of imperialism in a one world government and the power shift to the EU with the UN and the WHO. We see it all happening. But, is America floundering? Are we seeing a decline in America? Just look at our leadership. Look at this Yahoo.com article. Biden has confused Iraq for Ukraine twice in the last 24 hours. President Joe Biden has mistakenly said Iraq when he meant Ukraine twice in the last day. On Tuesday night, he referred to the onslaught on Iraq at a fundraiser in Maryland. On Wednesday morning, he said Putin is clearly losing the war in Iraq. 2 separate occasions in the last 24 hours, President Joe Biden has mistakenly referred to Ukraine as Iraq. Now, we know, but obviously, Biden has dementia, onset dementia. We know that. We can see his declining ability to be able to speak and to do the things that he used to do. And it's a problem. It's just showing our weakness, our inability to find a leader, an inability to lead as a nation. And so we see the decline of the United States happening right before our eyes. And so as we get further into the news, things that show us that, and some of this is stuff that we already knew. This was a MSN. This was actually I think it was a Jerusalem Post article that the MSN put on, which is a surprise. Mainstream media is playing these type of articles. It says China created COVID-19 as a bioweapon, Wuhan researcher claims. China deliberately engineered the coronavirus as a bioweapon, a Wuhan Institute of Virology researcher claimed this week in an interview conducted by Chinese-born human rights activist and author Jennifer Zhang. Researcher Chao Xiao asserts that the virus was deliberately engineered by China as a bioweapon and that his colleagues were tasked at identifying the most effective strain for spreading among various species, including people. And so, again, another whistleblower comes forward. We know that a lot of them have been in hiding. One gal came forward and was sharing all the truth. And, of course, the mainstream media shut her up and said she was lying and we couldn't trust her. And all these whistleblowers from China keep coming out and telling us what we knew all along and what we've been sharing all along, that this was deliberately done. It was a plandemic, not a pandemic. And we need to remember that. And, the people that are involved in it, in the planning of all this, what were their lifestyles like? Well, it's coming at this applenews.com. This Apple News article right here. Women interviewing for Bill Gates' private office were asked sexually explicit questions. Go figure. Bill Gates is a pervert. We've known that. Some people who sought jobs at billionaire Bill Gates' private office described going through an extensive screening process that included being questioned by a security firm about their sexual histories, past drug use, and other parts of their private lives that might include they were vulnerable to blackmail. Some of them had asked them what pornography they had, if they had extramarital affairs. And this is it's just sick that and they say that they give it to this vulnerable to blackmail stuff. But we know Bill Gates, he was involved with Epstein, and we know all of this stuff is disgusting and sickening. These people that are involved in this global domination, this, taking care of, of being in control of our health. People like Bill Gates, that is one of the biggest supporters of the WHO, by the way, that just took over the global ID platform in Europe, are involved in these sick, perverted relationships and things that happen behind closed doors that you and I just cannot even understand. But it's a good thing we're not planning for any major global deception these days, are we? Well, this article from The Hill that came out this week, Congress doubles down on explosive claims of illegal UFO retrieval programs. Asked June 26th about allegations of secret UFO retrieval and reverse engineering programs, Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chairman Marco Rubio made several stunning statements. Now, this isn't Mr. Conspiracy Basement Theory guy. This isn't, some aide for somebody that was an assistant for somebody in some secret shadowy government program. This is the Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chairman Marco Rubio. Okay, this is somebody who would have inside information on truth, not lies, not conspiracies. Listen to what he says. In an exclusive interview, Rubio told News Nation Washington correspondent Joe Kalil that multiple individuals with very high clearances and high positions within our government have come forward to share firsthand UFO-related claims beyond the realm of what the Senate Intelligence Committee has ever dealt with. Rubio's comments provide context for a bipartisan provision adopted unanimously by the Senate Intelligence Committee, which would immediately halt funding for any secret government or contractor efforts to retrieve and reverse engineer craft of non-Earth or exotic origins. Beyond the Senate Intelligence Committee, the powerful investigative body that oversees the nation's intelligence agencies have found the aforementioned whistleblowers' allegations that secret UFO-related programs are illegally withheld from Congress to be credible and urgent. Moreover, according to two reports, multiple military intelligence and contractor officials collaborated claims that the U.S. government or private companies possess multiple craft or possible non-human origin. So we see that our government and people in the government that we've been talking about for years have been in either messing with or involved directly with these things that they call aliens, that we know are actually demonic, fallen beings that are lying to them and telling them that they're here for our good and offering them in exchange technology and things like that is all a lie from the pit of hell. They're building up for the great deception of what happens when millions of people disappear off the earth. And then they'll have this, where they release all the truth and say they've been with us all this time. We've had a relationship with them. They are living among us, and it's a great deception that's building. But and we know that some of this stuff that they've reversed engineered, some of the stuff that believe it or not, a lot of our technologies that we enjoy today come from some of this highly technical Nephilim technology. And we know that the creation of artificial intelligence, when they were stuck in the code writing, when they were still trying to figure out how to make this thing actually come alive, that many of them during trances and seances and meditations, got voices from people from the future. They channeled these demonic Nephilim people, and they were given the information to create AI. So it shouldn't surprise us when we see this charismanews.com article that says new AI-generated Ouija board aims to converse with the dead. People around the world are starting to flock to grief tech for answers, much like Saul flocked to the medium at Endor when he wanted answers from the deceased prophet Samuel. But what is grief tech, and is it as abominable as the Lord finds the practice of necromancy and sorcery? Grief tech is a growing practice of AI algorithms gathering data from people such as their voice, photos, video, text messages, emails, and any other bits of information a person can input into the program so that when they die, the AI will interact with their loved ones as if they were with them. There are already programs that can create digital avatars of the person, including holograms. This will allow a widow to have conversations with her dead husband, but in actuality is performing the AI. Seance AI, who choose that particular name on purpose, are trying to replicate an actual spiritual seance like Saul did with the medium. Jaron Rocks, creator of Seance AI, said in an interview with Futurism that he likens his product to an AI-generated Ouija board for closure rather than a means of immortality. So we already know these things are demonic. We already know that they have a lot of issues and problems, and it shouldn't surprise us as our culture continues to go into what we've been talking about, our last days culture. And of course, we're going to know that not only will we see an apostasy in the church, but we'll also see a persecution of those that are Christians. And of course, this Georgia Star News article says LGBT activists say "We're coming for your children" chant is just misunderstood. Several LGBT activists dismissed concerns about a New York City drag march participant chanting "We're coming for your children" after a viral video of such an incident drew blowback this week, according to NBC News. A video of New York City drag marchers chanting "We're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children" garnered 5 million views on Twitter this week and a considerable criticism from conservatives. A Tuesday NBC article claimed the phrase had been used at pride events for years and that it's intended to destigmatize the LGBT community and take the sting out of accusations of grooming children into various sexual identities. No, duh, you said it with your own words. They told the outlet the chants at pride marches were meant to be heard by the surrounding crowd, not by people watching it on video after the fact. Brian Griffin, the original organizer of the New York City drag march, said he usually chants even more provocative and obscene slogans during marches, such as "Kill, kill, kill, we're coming to kill the mayor," along with jokes about sex toys and pubic hair, according to NBC. So these people are sick, and they are coming for our children. These drag queen story hour people are perverts that are pedophiles. And, and we shouldn't see it, but what happens when we speak out against it? Right now in America, you might think that you're free, but you don't have to travel far away from the border of the United States to be put in jail for these things. Because look, this humanevents.com article from last week, Mexican politician convicted of gender-based political violence over social media posts calling a trans woman a man. Civil social leader and former Mexican Congressman Rodrigo Iván Cortés has been convicted of gender-based political violence for posts on social media that described transgender Mexican congressional representative Salma Luvano as a man who self-ascribes as a woman per ADF International. Cortés, who is the head of the political advocacy group Frente Nacional por la Familia, which is National Front for the Family, has been convicted for using digital, symbolic, psychological, and sexual violence and masculine references towards Luvano on Twitter and Facebook. Cortés called the Organization of American States, OAS, to intervene concerning the systematic violations of fundamental rights. Cortés is currently awaiting a ruling on his appeal. Cortez wrote in his statement to OAS in Mexico, the freedom of expression of citizens is canceled and their free participation in the democratic confrontation of laws is prevented. Unfortunately, I suffer this in my own flesh in the cases that are being carried out against me, the organization that I preside over, the National Front for the Family, for objecting to initiatives that ostensibly violate human rights. Cortez initially came under scrutiny after he responded on social media to a piece of legislation that would see Mexico's Congress label Christian teachings on sexuality as hate speech, per the report. So here's a man in government, he's retired now, in Mexico, that spoke out against a transgender person. So that would be, and then said something about it on social media. That would be like me pointing out, the deputy health secretary is a man that Biden had appointed in his administration, and the Biden administration coming and arresting me and throwing me in jail because I made a statement of truth, a statement of fact. That is where the world is coming to, and we can see it happening. Now, I want to leave us with one more story today, just kind of a lighthearted one to kind of show you where the world is coming to. And I really don't understand why they made a big deal about this story, as in there's many others that would be more of a thing, but I thought I found it kind of comical. Minnesota man arrested after throwing Skittles at people in restaurant. A Minnesota man was arrested after an apparent outburst inside a restaurant where he allegedly began throwing Skittles at people inside the establishment. Oh, we can't have that. And listen to this. The incident happened at a restaurant in Mankato, Minnesota on June 23rd when 19-year-old Tristan Stetina allegedly entered a local restroom when he began yelling and throwing Skittles at employees and customers. According to a statement at probable cause, one of the victims told police officers that she was hit in the back with a Skittle, which caused a stinging pain in her back area. Oh, man. Getting hit by a Skittle hurts, basically. Responding officers Skittles all over the ground, as well as a bag of the popular candy located near the garbage. When police located Stetina and arrested him, the suspect allegedly wrapped his leg around one of the officers, trying to trip him, the document says. He also attempted to pull away and break free as he was being placed under arrest. In total, it took 3 officers to get control of the suspect, according to the probable cause statement. He's being charged with obstruction of legal process, interfere with a police officer, 5th-degree assault, disorderly conduct, and I guess he had possession of drugs. And so it shouldn't surprise us, as we continue to see the downfall of our society and culture. Our young people, our young adults here are going to snap and do crazy things like throw Skittles at people and yell at people in restaurants because we have destroyed the foundation of this country. We're training and raising up insane young people that have no purpose. When we tell them that they come from the goo to the zoo to you, and then they start acting like animals, we act like we're surprised and we have these headline news. And so it's exactly what we would expect as the world gets farther away from Jesus Christ. As they continue to reject the gospel, continue to reject God's created world, continue to reject his rules and his righteousness, mankind will continue its slide into this crumbling foundation of morality and lawlessness that will abound all over. And of course, we'll see, as we saw today, not only the immorality rising up, but the imperialism beginning to form in the globe. And a country that is smoking dope and drinking beer and is just out there to lunch and watching videos about spy balloons and is totally oblivious to the fact that all of their personal freedoms are about to be taken away and put into a dystopian future where they will be told what they can do, what they can buy and sell, and that they'll be required to follow the state rules and laws in order to follow them. But that's really where we're at today. But before we leave today, before we move on our way, I just have something that I want to say to you, the Christian, to you, the pastor or leader, to you, the person that has been born again and bought by Christ's blood, that is living in the end times, just like people have talked about before, that as a Christian in the United States of America, you have been given a tremendous window and a tremendous responsibility in these last days to stand for righteousness, to be a light in the darkness, to be salt and light. And because of our prayers, and because of our constant petitions to God, God has blessed us with this open window of religious freedom that I'm afraid, as I see the Laodicean church continue to flourish during these times, that nobody's going to take advantage of. We have had some significant Supreme Court laws that have come into place, not to mention the reversal of the Lemon Law, which says that it was unconstitutional for us to be able to pray in school or to have a 10 Commandments up in our courtroom. And when that law that was overturned, that very little people bothered to mention, when that high school coach was given by the Supreme Court the right to pray after a ball game, they had to give him his job back, and it overturned a law that had been on the books for a while that was removing crosses from hillsides and statements of Christianity and symbols of faith all over the United States. That law has been turned around, and that you and I do have a right to practice our religion, to practice our faith out in the public square. And nothing could be louder and truer than what happened today, because just yesterday, the Supreme Court came forward in a 9-0 decision that the postal worker had a right to not work on Sunday so that he could go to church. That is huge, you guys. So if you're working someplace, Christian, if your boss is telling you you have to work on Sunday, you have a Supreme Court now that tells them otherwise, unless it is an extreme due hardship for the business. Like there ain't nobody else to replace you and the business is going to go under. They have to they have to make it so that you can have Sundays off. I know for a fact people that work for places like Walmart and Home Depot and Lowe's, they've been forced to work Sundays, and they've been told that they can't get out of it. Well, now you can turn around and go to your boss and say, no, I have a right as a Christian to go to church on Sunday. You don't have to force me to work. You can find somebody else for the shift. And if they persecute you, if they say anything, if they try to cut your shift or your hours, you could turn around and sue them now. That's how much religious freedom that we have right now. But what about if you're a business and that you don't want to write a website for an LGBTQ couple or an LGBTQ website, and you're a website designer? Guess what? 6-3 just came out today that you have the freedom and the right to tell them no. So if you're a florist, if you're a baker, if you design websites, if you do any kind of business and you don't want to do business for somebody that violates your convictions, the Supreme Court just loudly and proudly said, yes, you do have the right. And so I have to ask, this is all out of our prayers in 2016. When we saw the direction of this world, we saw what Obama had done to this country, and we saw how our religious freedoms were crumbling, and we fervently prayed for change. And God sent us Donald Trump. And I don't care what you think about him. I don't care how much you want to say about his character. God can use ungodly people to perform his will, and he did. Those 3 Supreme Court justices in that 4-year period that Donald Trump put in there answered our prayers for Roe versus Wade. It's answered our prayers for religious freedom. So what are you going to do, Christian? What are you going to do, pastor? What are you going to do, leader? Are you going to live your faith out loud and in public? Or are you going to continue to hide behind the walls of your woke or liberal church? You're going to hide behind the walls of your comfortable living room, sitting in your chair, drinking oat milk lattes while the world is going to hell in a handbasket? Or are you going to go out as an American Christian in the United States of America on the foundation and rock that we prayed for and people have died for, that gives you the right to go out and live your faith in public and tell your boss, no, I'm a Christian. That's against my convictions. I'm not going to do that. And you don't have to tell me to do that because of the First Amendment of the United States. You have the freedom to live your faith, and that means to go into all the world and make disciples. That means to preach the gospel to every creature. You have the freedom to do that, Christian. And there's too many churches right now, even in Calvary Chapel, that won't get involved in the political realm, that won't get involved in standing up for life, that won't get involved in standing up for the freedom. And guess what? We're winning right now. And you have the ability and the right and you need to have the willingness to go out and get into the fight, man. We were born for such a time as this. It shocks me. I think Chuck Smith would be rolling over in his grave if he saw and realized that the day has come that he was foretelling for 30 years. For over almost 50 years, he was saying that there was a time coming that has come now, and that he would be shocked to see so many of the people that call themselves the church that he founded that are rolling over to the capitulation of the culture. And it amazes me that that he sees people that were part of his teaching not getting in the fight. And it just blows my mind. And I pray for you. I ask you to get into the fight today. You have religious freedom. Man, the Supreme Court is shouting loudly and proudly and giving you the ability to live your faith in public today. And so as Christians in 2023, waiting for that sudden and imminent return of our Lord Jesus Christ can be about the work of his business in the country that you are planted in today. And I can't encourage you enough to do that. And if you're watching this and you maybe don't even know what I'm shouting and screaming about because you've never put your faith and trust in Christ, this is what we have the freedom to do, to tell you that you are lost and in sin. That the Bible says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and we're not afraid to tell you what sin is. Homosexuality is a sin. Calling yourself another gender is a sin. But so is lying, so is stealing, so is adultery of the heart. If you look in lust after another woman, Jesus says you've committed adultery with them already in your heart. We have broken every law of God, and we deserve judgment. But God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son to go and die on a cross for your sins. And if you put your faith and trust in him, that you surrender your life over to Christ and ask him to forgive you of all those sins, and ask him to come into your life, realizing that God he rose from the dead. He still lives to make intercession for you and I. And if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, the Bible says you will be saved. And he will give you a new heart, one that doesn't desire to sin anymore, that turns away from that lifestyle that you used to live, that gives you a new godly desires that will please the Lord. And so I can't tell you enough that time is running out. Jesus isn't going to put up with the stuff going on in this world much longer. So you need to give your life to Christ today. And for you and I, as I just stated, and I pretty much emphatically said, that we need to get into the fight. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God, for the pulling down of the strongholds they're trying to put in our children's lives and trying to shove down your throat at your workplace, in your schools, and in our life with this ESG and DEI garbage. And you have the freedom from the Supreme Court to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm a Christian. We need Daniels. We need John the Baptist in these last days. And I can't encourage you enough to be that person. And I pray that God would just pray for me as a pastor of a little tiny church in Orangevale, California, that I would have the strength and the boldness to not only say these things, but to lead by example. To be those that I'd be out in the public square and on these platforms saying that sin is sin and God is God and the cross is the cross and the blood of Christ still cleanses a man from sin. So help us do that. Continue to pray, like, and share. We thank you for watching this podcast and this prophecy update. I'll see you all again, some of you on the weekend at church, But for those of you that are just listening to the podcast, we'll see you Monday when we're back in Daniel. So God bless you. If you have been blessed by this podcast, please subscribe and share to help get the word out in these last days. If you'd like more information or to contact us, please go to calvarysolidground.com. God bless you and see you next